Hi, everyone. I hope everybody's doing fine. So I just working with my students in class. I wanted to share this with my virtual students. So a couple things to make it more efficient. If you are setting up your tic-tac-toe game to have, three buttons in a row or three labels or three something in a row, you have this in the row. Um, One of the things that I recommend doing is getting your buttons the shape that you want them to be, and then duplicating that row to make your second and third row. That'll be a lot quicker than making all the buttons one way individually. So let me talk about that. So how did I make this button square versus the round that they are? Of course, when they come to you, when you first bring them in, they say button on them. So it kind of looks like that. Um, First thing you want to do is get rid of that text because for tic-tac-toe, you probably want it to be empty. The next thing you want to do is probably scroll down to your height and your width and change these to be an absolute value size. So I think for me, I chose 75 for my height, and for my width, I also chose 75. And you can see that that makes it about the same size. Now, it's a lot rounder. Of course, it's more circular than this one is. How do you change that? Well, if you scroll down just a little bit farther, you'll see the property for the radius. If you remember anything about circles, they have a radius. And so if you make that radius smaller, it'll make it more square. So if it's a 0 radius, it's pretty much square with corners. But if you want the corners to have a little bit of a circle to it, you can change it to 10. And they have a little bit of a circle or something less than that or whatever you want. Okay, so that's how you can change the buttons. You click on this button, you see my radius is 5. Click on this button, it also is 5. It must be a different size. So let me see. This one I had it 70. This one I had 75. So I change that back just to make them the same. Just change those properties, get them all the same. Do the same thing to this one. Once you get them all the same, then you want to copy right? Copy that row. Now, one other thing you might want to consider is colors. You might want them to be all certain color. That's up to you. Anyway, let's go into the row. So over here, I can select the row, or I can click in here to get the row. So for example, now I'm on the button. Now I'm on the row, or I can come over here and do it. Then duplicate. So over here, this is a duplicate option. I've zoomed in quite a bit. But here's the duplicate option. And when I do that, it creates all three buttons just like I had it. So once I have them the way I want them, the right color, the right shape, the right size, then I can duplicate and get my three rows in. Now again, some of my students in class were saying, well, how come these are so far away? That's because the rows are fill container. So the container is the screen. If you look up here, row 1, and I can make this a little bit easier to see. Row 1, row 2, and row 3 are all inside the screen. Well, the screen is the container of these three rows. So they're trying to fill up that whole screen. If you don't want that, you can say fit contents. And now the rows are going to be the size, at least that's the height of the buttons inside because the buttons are in this is contained inside the row. So fit contents like that. You can also select the screen and you can tell the screen to be centered or top or bottom to get the three rows wherever you want them. I like center, so I'm going to put it back to center. Okay. The last thing I do want to talk about is variables. Something that a lot of students have been asking me is the scores. So if I brought in a button, well, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to duplicate this row. I think this might be quicker. Duplicate. But now I want a margin to kind of separate a little bit. Top margin of say 20. And I don't need a third button. So I'm going to delete that button. Delete. There we go. So this is going to be X's score. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to type in, actually I'm going to put a column in here. Just to format it however you want, but I'm going to show you this just to give you an idea. Column. I'm going to bring that in here. And bring that in here. And then bring another column. Oh, that column is inside my column. That's not what I want. So come over here and switch that. I want this column outside. There we go. So now I've got a column beside a column, and I want the buttons inside. I'm going to make these just a little bit smaller. So I'm going to change their size to say 40. Okay, like that. I like that for the height. Then I'm going to bring in some labels. So type in label. This is for the score, and I'm going to put the label on the column above. Yep, good. And a label on the top of that. So this is going to be changing the text property to say X's score. And I think it's a good idea once you start having a whole bunch of stuff, especially if you're going to use it in programming, to give it a name that you're going to recognize. So this button here, I'm going to program it to do something when I click it. So I'm calling, instead of calling it button 10, I'm going to call it the X score button. Okay. And this one's going to be the Y score button, or sorry, 0, the O score button. Okay. And I want this label to say the O score. All right. Now I have it laid out the way I want it. Now let's go into programming into the blocks. All right, so what I have done already, let me throw this away, throw this away, throw this away. All right, so to get the score to work, I need to have a variable. So I've already brought in these two variables, the O score variable and the X score variable. Where do I get that? Well, look here. I just bring in this initialize just like that, change the name to O score and add a 0 because my score is going to start out, initialize out as 0. And so that's kind of how I made that. And I got the math block from here, 0. So that's how I did that. Of course, I don't need this one, but I'm just showing you how I did it. So I'm going to throw that away. Now, the next thing I want is my button. So I come down here, the score button. When X wins, I want them to click on this button. And I want that variable to go up from 0 to 1. So how do I do that? I come up here to variables, and I set the variable to what the variable was. So I need a math block to add to it, plus 1. So I bring that in like that. And then I need a variable, this variable right here, the X score variable in here. So again, sometimes you have to read these kind of backwards. So you start over here on the right and go to the left for this computer programming. But I'm going to take 1 and add it to my variable to get my new variable, setting the variable for X score from what it was to plus 1. All right, now that just changes the variable. That doesn't change what the user sees. So again, I'm going to go into my button, my X score button, and I'm going to grab the text of that button. And I'm going to make it be the variable plus, or no, just the variable. So I'm going to duplicate that and make it equal to the variable. So basically, when the variable gets set to whatever it was, plus 0, so the first time it's going to be 0 plus 1, going to make it 1. It's going to show up on the button as the text property. Let's go check it out. If I live test it, I should be able to click on this and it turned to 1. Now it would be nice if I started out with a 0 there. And I'm not quite sure liking this either because they're all scrunched up and there's no separation from one button to another. So this might need to be resized, but that's not what this lesson's about. Again, once you have this, you want to duplicate it once it's working and you got to know that it works right and change it all to your O score. O score, O score, O score, O score. And now again, if I live test it, both these should do that. I click on them. They just add 1 to it every time I click on it. You're also going to need a button to reset. So again, you're going to need to set all the text to blank or to 0 when you click the reset button. So those are some ideas to think about. Again, one thing that I didn't like was the fact that this started out at nothing, I think it should start out at 0. So for both of those, they start out at 0. So now when I preview it, that looks good. It's 0. X wins. I click on that. O wins. I click on that. And then I need another button down here that says, yep, I'm done playing you. You beat me. You beat me like 20-1. So I'm done. Let's reset the score. That I did not do today. You can figure that out. All right. I hope that helps with the score. Here is the blocks again. You need a variable to keep track of your score. So initialize a variable, set it to 0 to start, then make the blocks something like this to add one to the variable, and then change it on the text property so that it shows up the new score.